Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the FM Technical Area, the Football Manager podcast brought to you by me, your host, Gaffer Graemo, once again. Delighted to be back. Delighted to keep this series going. I hope you're enjoying the video content. It's been a tricky mistress to get right, I won't lie. Been a few difficulties, a few challenges along the way, but look, fingers crossed now that we're on the way, and you're enjoying these extra few bits. Time of recording, it is Monday. Unfortunately, I have to stack up a few episodes. I'm going to be heading off soon on my honeymoon, so it's going to be a little bit of a busy few days trying to get these things stacked, ready to go. This morning, I put up the 3 tactics we spoke about last week on the episode from Matt Busby, Arsene Wenger, and Maurizio Sarri. Available to download from the website, the FM Technical Area. Then, of course, through Twitter and Slack, I shared the links there as well for anyone who hasn't seen just yet. So, look, there'll be a few episodes getting stacked up. The choice for episode this time kind of came down to one of 3 because I thought I have 4 kind of ready to go, scripted. So it's kind of like, which order are they going to come out in? Unfortunately, when it comes to the last, then there's going to be no choice. You're going to be just getting the last episode, whether that's going to be about pragmatism or it's going to be about. Oh, quick look there. I haven't got it to hand, do I? It's going to be either about pragmatism next, or it is going to be about pressing innovations. How could I forget? But your next choice is going to be either between talking about Arrigo Sacchi, the development of Fabio Capello, then at AC Milan following Sacchi, and then Jurgen Klopp, of course. In terms of pressing, or your option, we look at pragmatism. So how Carlo Ancelotti, Zinedine Zidane, and Antonio Conte been pragmatic in their footballing philosophies and their football approaches. I hope you're enjoying the jersey backdrops I have here ready as well. Trying to keep it a little bit themed. So we're obviously going to be talking about Fernando Diniz. We have Pep Guardiola. I don't think I have any Pep Guardiola Barcelona jerseys there. Marcelo Bielsa, I think that's a little bit later on with the 2 there. But of course, down the bottom there, that side, and here on the chest, you'll see me wearing my Shelbourne colours. Big match tonight versus Derry City for Shells. So fingers crossed, first game back in the league in a month after our little European adventure in July. So there could be a chance of Shells to, really stake a chance for a league for the first time in 18 years. So that's certainly a little bit of an excitement point for me tonight. So that's my evening plan sorted once I get this edited, of course, and scheduled to go out. There is no save updates because I'm not in the future yet. On the save, it is Monday the 5th of August. That's exactly where I am. I'm going to be behind when I come back from holiday, but like that, I'll be able to catch up then. I'm not going to get ahead as much as I hoped I would be, but look, we're going to enjoy it. I think we're going to get there and we're really going to have a great time. I really do hope. Forgive me now if I am looking down if you're watching it, the screen is down here. I can see myself. Just make sure I'm still in shot of it. My iPhone up here plugged in as a camera. So fingers crossed now the audio and all this stuff, we can get it going, have a really, really good time of the audio and video developments here. Hopefully the audio as well is coming through as clear as it always has been. Now, in terms of the save of the philosophy we're talking about today, is about control and about freedom. We're talking about controlling the game, freedom of movement, freedom of expression, fluidity in a game, really, and it's an evolution kind of on some of the principles we spoke about last week. Of course, with Football Manager, it can be difficult to incorporate some key elements into your save. Tactically, all of these things, it can be a little bit challenging, a little bit difficult, but hopefully like that, we can try and incorporate some of these elements from real life and translate them into Football Manager so that when it comes to you and your save. So I'm going to minimize myself up here into the corner now, and we're going to go and create a Marcelo Bielsa inspired 3-3-1-3 formation in Football Manager. But of course, when I'm talking about the 3-3-1-3 now, what you're going to see here is the 3-3-1-3 in possession. It's not necessarily going to be 3-3-1-3 on the tactic screen. So when we go in here to create our new tactic, one of the elements we're going to do in here now is going to create our own style. The reason is with Bielsa, he's such a fusion of direct counter-attacking, of pressing style of football and controlling possession, that really using one of the presets like that, while it will have elements of all 3 in this, I want this to truly feel like a Bielsa style, that it's not influenced by any of these presets. We're then going to go with a 4-2-3-1 formation. But with this 4-2-3-1 now, there are going to be adjustments, like I said, like that's going to make this feel like a 4-2-3-1. Because if you looked at how those Leeds teams in particular lined up, say, when they were in the Premier League and the Championship under Bielsa, the graphics before a game would have looked like a 4-2-3-1. Despite the fact that when in possession, a 4-2-3-1 was the last thing we saw from this team. So, in order to make that change to a 4-2-3-1, it is one defensive midfielder who's going to sit in the centre and one central midfielder who's going to sit directly in front of him. So it's going to look a little narrow in midfield, but like that, because we have the positional rotations, the positional play in Football Manager incorporated into the match engine, these two players won't line up one behind the other. They'll be able to move in conjunction with the players around them. So like that, now that we've got the kind of formation set, the way that the basis of which we're going to build from, it's now talking about the player roles. Our goalkeeper is going to be a sweeper keeper on support because we need them to be comfortable with the ball and contributing to the build-up play as well. Because we're playing a high pressing style of football, they'll be coming out of the box, clean up any long balls over the box. So it's like that, having a sweeper there like that, as the name suggests. On either side, we're going to have two complete wing backs on support. And the reason on attack, myself is there on my notes, apologies. The reason we want complete wing backs on attack is very simple. We want these players pushing high and being aggressive. As we said there, overlaps from the fullbacks can be a key element, a key principle of what Bielsa does. So with the complete wing back in attack, we're going to get this really aggressive player coming from deep. Despite the fact that we're now in possession like that, we may have this bank of four at the back. With the complete wing back as well, the players are also comfortable drifting into the channels. So if either of our wide players here are sticking to the line, these players can attack the channels. They'll move in here. Between these two complete wing backs, we're going to have two ball playing defenders on defend. Again, players technically proficient, comfortable with the ball at their feet, and can contribute to all phases of the play. So whether that's in possession or out of possession, as well as the transitions. They'll regain the ball, be comfortable with the ball at their feet, and like that begin play from the back. The defensive midfielder is going to be on support in front of them. So like that, we have our screen here, but we have our link-up play then between our back line and our front. If you want to be a little bit more conservative and have a defensive midfielder on defend, or even a deep line playmaker on defend or support, either of these will work, depending, of course, on the availability of players it is that you have. The likes of Calvin Phillips, I kind of feel, is best seen as a defensive midfielder on support. There's still a creative element to what Calvin Phillips does. You could still call him a playmaker in essence. But really here, I feel the defensive midfielder on support would encapsulate the Calvin Phillips role that we saw at Leeds with Bielsa. In front of the defensive midfielder, though, this is where our playmaker is going to be. And it is going to be an advanced playmaker on support. So we have our link-up play, our creative player here, and our player who's going to, like that, sit kind of in the central third of the pitch, but then join the attack and be the key creative hub, especially when we go and look at the player roles we're going to have in front, because we need this kind of creative hub sitting in the central third of the pitch, who's going to then be able to comfortable and drive forward. So really kind of what you could have here then, we've got our three, and then you've got this three here. This complete wing back, advanced playmaker almost. That's our second kind of bank of three. Now for the 1-3. How are we going to create that 1-3 up in the final third? Well, it's actually going to be quite simple. We're going to have two inside forwards on attack. And with the inside forwards, these forwards, like we said last week, they're going to be players who start out wide, drive inwards, and can be key attacking presences in the final third. Rafinha, in particular, shone in this role at Leeds under Bielsa. Phenomenal cutting in from that wide area. So we want to, again, just, take that style, take that element of a player and have this, ability to drive inwards from wide, have the attacking threat. So like that with our advanced playmaker, he's two options to feed the ball to, coming in from wide areas, so making these diagonal runs. And then, of course, with the complete wing backs then as well, we've got an overlapping presence on either side. So that way, with the inside forwards, if they're wide, the complete wing back can cut in and underlap to an extent. Or if the inside forward is moving in, the complete wing back takes their place in that wide third of the pitch. Behind then, this main striker, which is going to be a pressing forward on attack, because we like this pressing forward element. And as well as the pressing forward, you get the advanced forward kind of instructions, the advanced forward feel, but it offers a little bit more with this pressing nature. We're going to have then a shadow striker on attack. This 10 is going to be our shadow striker. I like to think perhaps maybe of Rodrigo again at Leeds, kind of being this type of player, a goal scoring threat from that number 10 position. So in terms of our formation, in terms of our roles, that is how we're going to set up with this Marcelo Bielsa style of football. Team instructions then, how are we going to get this philosophy of Bielsa into the game? How are we going to have this high intensity and dynamic approach in game with the player instructions? Well, Bielsa is a positive coach, so we're going to have this positive style of football instantly straight away. That's the mentality we want to play with. That's the way we want to be. Bielsa is about controlling the pitch. So in possession, what instructions are we going to do? Well, we're going to have a wide team. We're going to make use of all areas of the pitch. And when you're wide as well, it opens up the channels in the central areas a little bit more for your players to move into and then control. So we're controlling these wide spaces. We're controlling the central spaces. Then we've got players attacking the channels then as well. We're going to play out of defence, of course, because we want to build from the back. We're going to pass into space because we're going to be opening spaces up with this wide area, and with the players' roles that we selected, we're going to have these players moving into space. And of course, then, because it's all about freedom, because it's all about control, we're going to allow our players to be more expressive in order to take risky passes, but really try and allow a sense of unpredictability, almost how we're going to build up, that these players are going to take chances, take risks. They might not always come off, but when they do, we've got a team that can be very, very hard and difficult to defend against. In transition, of course, because games can be won in transition, we're a high pressing, energetic team here. So we're going to counter press, we're going to counter, and our goalkeeper is going to distribute quickly, because we want this game kind of played in a positive way. We want this game played in a real controlling manner. We want to be able to get at the opposition and be relentless in how we play. When it comes to the out of possession sense of the team, what is it we're going to do? How is it we're going to make this work? Well, look, instantly we're high pressing, so we're going to have a high defensive line. We are then going to have a higher line of engagement, because we really want to get on top of the opposition. We really want to get on top of them, make them suffocate, not give them a moment on the ball. So that's really the two key kind of elements here. We're going to prevent short goalkeeper distribution. And of course, offside trap is naturally built into these shapes. Now, players will try and play offside when they feel it's right in game. And with a sweeper keeper behind, Atten comes through, we're going to hope that he can, well, not being as aggressive as a sweeper keeper on attack, he can be kind of like that out of the box presence that sometimes, if a long ball over the top tries to catch us, we've got a player competent and capable there of coming to the rescue for us. So what we've got then is an overall team instruction. We've got the sense of feel of the philosophy, but of course there just needs to be some instructions that our players have here. So with our complete wing backs like that, staying wider is going to be absolutely important and could get further forward. So if you don't want to use the complete wing back and you want to use wing backs on attack, make sure you've got get further forward and stay wider as two of their instructions there. With our inside forwards like that, we want them to actually sit narrower. So like that, although we will be making these diagonal runs, we want them sitting narrower. So like that, a channel option there, diagonal run from there, but like that, they will cover the wide areas, they will cover the opposition fullback if needed. And then the striker like this are pressing forward, move into channels and close down more. Very, very important, because like that, we want to defend from the front. We want to make sure that we're suffocating the opposition from the front, not giving them a moment to breathe. Like that, the other element of Bielsa's tactics can often be to man-mark the opposition. Every player, when out of possession, has a player to mark. If that's something you want to do in your opposition instructions before every game, feel free to do it. Every player has a player to mark. Most teams to start with a lone forward. One of these two central defenders will be your spare man. So like that, this kind of can be the player that you build from the back. If you're playing against a team with two up front, make the adjustments there that maybe like that your wing back would mark one of the central forwards there as well, and like that or the defensive midfielder, advanced playmaker, they kind of adjust who it is that they mark in the team. But there, I feel my interpretation of Marcelo Bielsa's style, we've kind of got that element of high pressing, high energy, dynamic, and fluid football. Now, for those of you listening, the quality of what you listen is not going to change. Unfortunately, for those of you who've been watching along, you might notice that the quality of the camera has suddenly changed and it's not as good as it once was. Well, I've tried to use my phone to record the start, as I said at the beginning, to unfortunately very mixed, mixed difficulties between overheating and storage issues. So I have to change back to the spud quality VGA camera. It's kind of just up there in the top of the laptop, but I hope it doesn't affect, the listening and the viewing experience anyway from this point on, as we're going to talk about two of our other coaches that we want to talk about, Pep Guardiola and Fernando Diniz. Now, while Marcelo Bielsa has been one of football's greatest influences, one of the coaches he's possibly greatest inspired is one of the potentially the greatest coaches of all time, Pep Guardiola. Guardiola himself, like that, really wanting to learn from the master during his own playing career as it came to an end. But Guardiola himself has forged a managerial career that has shown he is a master of control and freedom. He is a master of the positional play approach to football, a footballing style that blends many elements of many different styles and philosophies, and really kind of like that just tries to, uh, you know, maximize the various approaches that he has. And we've seen that style throughout his managerial career, from signings and innovations as well with the tactics, the way he has played, of course. Guardiola likes to break down his style of football through a very, very drilled and dogmatic approach that focusing is on zonal breakdowns of the pitch, whereby there is never more than three players in a horizontal line and never more than two positioned vertically. So while that's elements of Bielsa there, you suppose, like that, the technical breakdown there of what we see from Pep Guardiola, slightly just different from what we have seen from Marcelo Bielsa. So we're seeing a slight evolution here from one to the other. Guardiola's players are drilled, and they are drilled to react to certain tweaks in opposition tactics. And what they do there is it's try to create superiority in the pitch. So when the opposition changes, shape because of roles, or changes shape in terms of the actual defensive setup you see in the tactics screen, Guardiola will then try and have his players drilled to know how to adapt to these situations. So what we kind of see here is a very fluid, a very expressive side, but a side that's well drilled and well coached in how to manipulate space across the pitch and adapt to the opposition players that they are going to be playing against. Now, while that might be difficult for us in Football Manager in some elements to incorporate and develop, in other ways it's actually not too bad. Opposition instructions could be one of the ways we do this. Or when we go into that tactics screen at the start, there is the ability to go into the dressing room, go into the tactics screen, and make subtle changes, subtle adaptations to how it is that you line up. So if the opposition normally line up with one or two strikers and they do the opposite, line up with one or two and the other way, what you kind of have there then is the ability for yourself just to make these subtle tweaks to say, right, instead of being inverted wing back, you're now going to be inverted full back. Make subtle small adjustments like this. That will certainly try and help how it is that you bring Pep Guardiola's style and influence and philosophy to life in you and your save and your tactical approach to Football Manager. So what we see often like that characterises Pep Guardiola's teams now especially has been this player stepping out of defence. Once upon a time it was an inverted fullback, inverted wingback, but now we see kind of this John Stones role where you could even argue it's a libero. Player stepping up out of defence and coming into midfield. Now, when this player kind of comes into midfield, what we have then is a WM kind of shape taking place. 3 and then 2, and then in front of them 2 and 3. So the team kind of takes on this 4-3-3 original shape, but now becomes a WM. 3 at the back, 2 defensive midfield role, 2 in the central midfield role, and then 3 attacking players across the pitch. This box midfield then characterises a Guardiola team, and of course the pivot player is key to this. Think of Rodri, think of Busquets, and how important these players were to how Guardiola wanted to play. Think of how you could suppose even argue say like Joshua Kimmich developed at Bayern under the management of Guardiola, and how he could have become this inverted fullback, inverted wingback, central midfield player. All of these characteristics in one, based on how Guardiola adapted the role for Philipp Lahm, the most technically proficient player at the Bayern Munich squad at that time, to kind of come in and play from his traditional normal full back role to now being this pivot player. But it's all built and it's all centered around the pivot. And that's the key to how you develop a Pep Guardiola style of play in Football Manager 24. So now we're going to go across to the tactics screen. I'm going to minimize myself. And from this point now, we'll go on and we'll see how can we recreate a Pep Guardiola style tactic in Football Manager 2024. And how can this inspire the philosophies in FM25 and beyond, the principles that we want to bring in to how it is that we play. So, with Pep Guardiola being the master of positional play, with Pep Guardiola being the master of tiki-taka style football, I suppose creating Pep Guardiola style tactics, it's very easy to jump into the presets here when we're creating a new tactic and look at tiki-taka as the basis. For me, again, I want to just use the custom approach. I just want to get the total Pep Guardiola experience here. But like that, if you want to kind of go in at a very, very basic level and make your own style of tiki-taka, the presets are something that many people may feel that they're better than, may overlook. But really, they're a fantastic basis upon which really, you can build from and begin to personalise from. Now, Pep Guardiola's style of football goes back to the Rinus Michel school, the Johan Cruyff school, the 4-3-3 element of total football. Again, the topic we'll be discussing in a couple of weeks' time. So 4-3-3, DM wide basis, very simple, of course, for where it is that we want to start. We've got that perfect formation. How do we make it work in a Pep Guardiola style? Well, of course, the sweeper keeper. On support, if you want to be really aggressive and go on attack, considering the way Ederson plays, and many people have spoken about Ederson being a potential centre midfielder at times. Sweeper keeper, technical goalkeeper, very, very, bog standard for this side of football it is that we want to play. Now, on the left and on the right, we have our fullbacks. Now, of course, this role has changed in the Guardiola team as time has gone on. You could start off with an inverted fullback on one side, say on the right, and then on the left hand side have, a wing back, someone who pushes up a little bit more, so that you kind of get that back three style of things that is for the WM. If you want a player to be the one that steps out to be a fullback, an inverted wing back then can be the one. So you've got that narrow three here, and then an inverted wing back on one side. Or like we're seeing now with Guardiola, it's kind of two inverted fullbacks on either side. And then what we have is a ball playing defender on defend. And then it is a libero. Now again, on defend or on support, again, it's how risky are you willing to take it? As we see with on defend, like that, it steps up into midfield and acts as a pivot. On support, it steps up, acts as a pivot. But the other thing that happens there as well with support, they'll step into midfield when possession is secured and look to play balls through. So I'm actually going to line up with the libero here. So I have my two inverted fullbacks, a ball playing defender, and the libero is going to be the one that steps up inside alongside the pivot. Now, but to be at the base of the team like that with the support role, it's going to make a diagonal line down when you have this deep line playmaker on defend here. This Rodri role, the Busquets role, deep line playmaker on defend. The libero will stand up and act alongside. On support, could end up in the final third. We've seen mazy runs from John Stones in the past. We've seen him end up quite high up in the pitch. Again, if you are a bit more risk averse, the defend role is absolutely fine. So that way he'll step up alongside the deep line playmaker, and you've got your double pivot there. The base, so you've got the W's now set up. You've got the 3, and then the 2 in front, the 2 prongs of that W. Okay. Now, centre midfielders on either side. We want an advanced playmaker on support on one side, so we're going to go with the left here. It can be the right again, of course, and a Mezzala on support on the other side. So again, players who will influence the ball in the final third, but again, act as the base of the M in that final area. Like that, the top of the box then with the deep line playmaker and the libero. Now, here I've got my libero on the right hand side, so it's perhaps a little bit best if, my advanced playmaker is on the right hand side. So the Mezzala switches to the left, the advanced playmaker is on the right. And the reason I want to do that there is because like that, the deep line playmaker should shift over then behind the Mezzala, that you haven't got your 2 playmakers kind of potentially caught on one side in one channel of the pitch. Wingers on either side are going to be inside forwards, attacking threats, players capable of scoring goals from wide areas, players who come in from the wide areas and support the central forward. Traditionally, this would have been a false 9. That's what traditionally this Guardiola team would have looked like. That's what we can look at here and bring that false 9 element back into it. A link-up play. But, of course, you've got Erling Haaland now at Manchester City, who is, I suppose the best way of putting it, a complete forward on attack. A player who links play up, a player who gets in the ball in the final third. Not an awful lot of pressing though out of complete forward either. So you've kind of got that link up play, you've got the target man, you've got the poach, you've got everything that Haaland is. So that's what you might see from Manchester City now. If you want to just be really totally tiki-taka, false 9, libero, you've got all these hipster roles in here. So your team is full of movement, it's full of rotations. Your team has kind of got an adaptive nature. But I suppose what Guardiola has done really well at times has been to buy players in and, like the likes of Haaland, and change the tactics and evolve around this one player. I suppose we think back to the Ibrahimovic experiment at Barcelona, which didn't work enough too well for everyone involved there. So, like that for you, think of the players you have, and maybe personalised player roles can all be a way that you could adjust here. So, if like that, if you had this if you had a team here with a false 9, and you're putting Haaland in, he's not going to be your false 9, is he? He's going to be a complete forward. So when Haaland plays, he's a complete forward. But if I want to start off with Bernardo Silva up there, he's going to be a false 9. It's these adaptations, these ways of changing, these ways of evolving. That's what you want to look at, what it is you're doing here with this team. In terms of getting the philosophy across to the overall team, it's tiki-taka, so it's positive football. It's one that's going to be all based around, much shorter passing. Shorter possibly being the safest bet here. It's going to play out defence because it's going to be technically built to act in this way. It's going to work ball into box. It's not about rushing and taking shots from the edge of the box. It's about being patient. It's about finding and creating the best opportunities. And of course, like that, it's about being more expressive. Think of all those great players that played for Guardiola, from his time at Barcelona to Bayern to City, and the creative expression these players have. That ties in with our philosophy that we're looking at here of control and freedom, because the players have the freedom to be expressive when they are on the pitch. In transition, Guardiola takes again those principles of counter-pressing and counter-attacking into his teams, and like that, the goalkeeper will distribute to the centre-backs, will build from the back, the libero will step up, the ball-playing defender will be a little bit more standard, the team will then, like that, build from the back, build from the centre-backs. And with inverting full-backs there as well, you've kind of got then that 3 at the back there again to work from. The libero then kind of like that being the 4th who will step up into midfield. So you've kind of got this fun, fluid element when you are building up from the back. Watch the movement of these players. It will be really a pleasure to watch. In terms of out of possession, again, we've got this high energy side of football. So we're going to have a higher defensive line. We're going to have a high pressing line, high line of engagement here. And like that, we're going to have the offside trap built in, natural here, and the sweeper keeper. Think of Ederson, Victor Valdez. Manuel Neuer, keeper's comfortable and capable of being out the ball. So if you really wanted to be aggressive, sweeper keeper on attack could be the way to go there. Now, in terms of your player instructions like that, you look in here, inverted fullbacks are going to do everything you want. They're going to sit narrower, they're going to hold position, but like that, when they have the ball, we just want to make sure that they cut inside. That's really the player instruction that we want to have here. That these inverted fullbacks, when they're in possession of the ball, when they have the ball themselves, they're going to cut inside with the ball here. Our inside forwards, we want them sitting narrower, like that, occupying the channels, creating link-up play, diagonal runs coming from these narrower spaces. They're going to cut inside of the ball. That's natural enough with the inside forward role selected. And then our false 9 that we're going to have here, like that, we're going to ask this player then to, roam from position and to dribble more, which is, of course, selected with that false 9 role. So what we have then is a false 9 who's willing to find pockets of space, operate there, connect as a link up with the inside forwards, connect as a link up with the Mazzala and the advanced playmaker who'll be bringing forward, kind of being the key, the hub to what is going on around him on either side. So with that shape, I hope you kind of get the best feeling of Guardiola's possession-based style and positional style of play, and how in Football Manager there's so much fun and fluidity with Guardiola's teams that it's so adaptive that you don't have to go base with what I have here, but you can go to new levels, take it to new areas, and experiment like that. Maybe I'm not going to use a libero, I'm going to invert a fullback, invert a wingback, like we once saw with Zinchenko and Cancelo, or like that, instead of the false 9, I'm going to use complete forward. Whatever it is, there's fun to be had with Guardiola's style, because like that, control and freedom of space is something that's going to happen all the way through, and the way it is that you create with the players in that shape, now, in that formation.
The final
there.
Coach, the final manager we're going to get involved in talking about here today is Fernando Diniz. Now, Fernando Diniz, of course, rose to fame with the way he had his Fluminense team playing not too long ago. A team that had a lot of the similar principles what we see with Bielsa and Guardiola, but a sense of relationism, a sense of movement, a fluidity that really was attractive to all who had the opportunity to watch them play. For Fernando Diniz, his team, of course, emphasises possession in the way the two previous coaches we have done before. This philosophy emphasises fluid movement, something again we've spoken about before, and intricate passing, an element which we see in the Guardiola system and to the Bielsa system to an extent. So what we've got here now is a heavy possession-based side, a side built on movement, a side built on expression, with intricate passing options. So what we're going to have to do if you're creating any sort of philosophy to match what Fernando Diniz does, the first thing you're going to have to do is you're going to have to look at how to bring fluid movement into your philosophy. Of course, high fullbacks creating crossing opportunities are a key factor in a Fernando Diniz system. So that's the second thing we're going to have to look at in terms of philosophy. And finally, then, of course, how we control space. Just like Guardiola, just like Bielsa, these coaches were obsessed with controlling space. They're obsessed with being able to create a system that right across the pitch has players in the best positions to control and dictate the game and have passing opportunities as well, spaces and ways in which they can play in order to pick apart the opposition and move them about in a way in which they control, in a way in which they orchestrate. With Diniz as well, this team controls the tempo of the game. His teams have a patient build-up play that begins at the back where the goalkeeper is involved. So again, we're seeing the goalkeeper being used as the 11th player here. Something we're seeing as a trend more and more in football, in that the goalkeeper is almost now like another central defender, one that just happens to wear a different colour jersey and gloves. As well, so Diniz, we've got to focus in on this possession play, this positional play, this kind of way of zonal supremacy, zonal superiority right the way through the pitch. Teams are based out of a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-3-3 shape, so similar in which we've seen with Guardiola, and similar again to what we've seen with Bielsa, both shapes which we used previously in this video, in this podcast, to base our systems on, our shapes on. There's creative midfield where players are encouraged to take risky passes in order to try and unlock and unpick the opposition. Again, if it comes off, great, and if not, the team was ready to transition into this into this high pressing state, a state which encourages the opposition to try and play, but in which Diniz and his team will try and disrupt. They'll try and create turnovers, and in particular, turnovers which target the pressing triggers of the opposition goalkeeper or centre backs being in possession of the ball. So again, it's a creative, it's a fluid team. And when we go now to the FM Tactics grader here on FM24, which I'm going to minimize myself and focus on here now, what we have is a side that we're going to have, again, a custom formation which we